We are coming to you from Southern California, but today bringing you stories from Washington, D.C. There is a vibrant, albeit not too many of them. It's not a big population of Filipino Americans in Washington, D.C., but I tell you, they are very tight, a close-knit community. They help each other. And what else? What are they like? We spoke to NaFFAA chapter president Ryan Namata, who talked to us about the Filipino American community in their area.
The way I can illustrate the biggest difference between East Coast Filipinos and West Coast Filipinos is this story. The first time I went to California was in 2006. I landed there for work in San Francisco. I remember coming down from the hotel, getting on the street, and I saw across from me, it looked like a Filipino guy who was carrying groceries. And I called to him real loud from the street, said, "Hey, hey!" And he looked and turned, and I said, "Hey!" And I ran across, got into his face about this close, and I said, "Hey, are you Filipino?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "I'm Filipino too." And he goes, "Okay."
Right.
and I grab my phone and go, "Put your number in this phone,
Right.
and I'm gonna call you later. Let's hang out." And he says, "No, thank you."
Right.
And walks away.
Right.
I was stunned, and the reason why I was stunned is because here in the East Coast, there's so few of us that when we see a Filipino here, we immediately connect.
Right.
And we, many times we'll exchange numbers. We'll invite people to our
Your
house parties. Yes,
Yeah.
they become adopted family members sometimes. And I try to keep that tradition here. But on the West Coast, there's so many Filipinos. I think that you guys take that for granted. That and so that guy, I still think of him to this day. I still see his face,
Right.
and how he rejected me.
I was going to say that it's a rejection.
I came here in the late 80s and grew up in the 90s. And our titos and uncles then were so super proud to be Filipino that they brought the entire culture and wanted to recreate it here as much as possible. So we had the biggest Filipino Independence Day parades here. We took all of Pennsylvania Avenue from Freedom Plaza all the way to Capitol Hill. It's something I've never seen before in any city. I think that's just how proud the titos and uncles were and my mom and dad when we first arrived here. And just really wanted to preserve the culture as much as possible. It's faded over the years. I think with every generation, we get a little bit further and further from home, so to speak. But there's still a lot of Filipinos here working to preserve the culture and making sure that we remember the things that make us Filipino.
Filipinos in NaFFAA capital. What industries are they in, and how are they? What are they like?
So in the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, we're really dominated in terms of jobs. We're really dominated by federal government type of work. But outside of that, I think they look like any other Filipinos that are all over the country. So we do have a lot of Filipino nurses that are based here. We have a lot of Filipino teachers.
What about Filipino groceries, supermarkets, Filipino restaurants? We have a lot of those.
My opinion is the best Filipino restaurants will tend to be here in D.C. I think we have the highest concentration of those Filipino restaurants that are not toro or a small on-pod. Actual sit-down restaurants, elevated Filipino food. I think this is the home for them. Where we're seated now is Purple Patch, very nationally recognized. And then in the suburbs, in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, you'll find the more authentic toro types of restaurants that are either in the back of or maybe in the front of the Filipino stores.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So when there are Filipino restaurants, it makes me think that there is a market for it. So do you see that in terms of numbers, the Filipino community has grown? How has it grown here?
Oh, since I've been here, I think that the community has grown tremendously. A couple of hours down south in Virginia Beach, it's a Navy town. And as you know,
Right.
any Navy town will tend to be full of Filipinos, and that community has exploded over the last, I would say, 20, 30 years or so. The D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, we've grown as well in terms of size. So this is, I think Filipinos here are starting to become a real force in terms of, especially as consumers, but also, in terms of NaFFAA, and what we think about a voting bloc. It's a really strong voting bloc as well.
Are there more Filipino Republicans or Filipino Democrats?
Well, DC proper is about 96% probably Democratic. Northern Virginia and Southern Maryland will tend to reflect what DC is, which is liberal, progressive, Democratic. But when you go down to the southern part of Virginia, so most military towns will tend to reflect more Republican type of orientation. And then in Maryland, on the 50-50 side, but I would say leaning towards more Democratic side.
So if we are to ask you now to invite viewers to come and visit DC, what would be your must-hit places?
You know, so I grew up a lot on the Maryland side of DC, and so Maryland crabs, as far as food, there's nothing like it. You know, nothing like it in the other parts of the country. On the Virginia side, they're known for their ham. So Virginia ham, that's really good. Yeah.
And what's the best time to come? With Filipino events, perhaps?
Well, I would say the absolute best time to come into DC would be in the spring for the cherry blossoms. Also in October for Filipino American History Month. Every organization, so for instance, the next 2 weeks is just jam-packed with so many events, and yeah.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today, and we hope this isn't the last time.
No.
We'll visit you again in a few years, maybe talk to you.
Come visit.
Right.
Thanks, Jeanette.
I love Washington, D.C. I always have a great time whenever I visit. You know, a lot of history is very inspiring. Of course, it's the nation's capital. But to live, I am still partial to Southern California because of a lot of things. Of course, the weather is one, a lot of different places here to enjoy as well. You drive a little bit and you're on the beach. You drive a little bit, you're in the mountains as well. There's a lot to visit. Even the desert, we're so close by, right? And of course, if you are in Southern California, McDonald's has a treat for you. Mix and match two of your faves for just $3.99 at McDonald's. There's plenty to choose from with McDonald's 2 for $3.99 deal, and now you can add a 4-piece McNuggets to the mix. Price and participation may vary. We will be back with more. Don't go away.